Hi, thanks for joining us here at Intrigue.TV. My name is Gregor Jones. I am with Bernie Mitchell.
Hi, Gregor.
Bernie, hi. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have a company in Southern California called Silver Platter Productions. I've been producing film, video in all formats way back forever. I'm also Panasonic's Pro Video Evangelist.
Okay.
What that means is I'm not a Panasonic employee, I'm a user of the equipment. I do get to sit in when Panasonic designs some of their cameras and give them my input, and I do get to get prototype cameras. This is the brand new DVX200. I actually got a prototype of this about a year and a half ago and have been shooting with it since then. A lot of great footage, a lot of great stories. I go out on the road, talk to schools and end users and explain to them why this is such a good camera.
Bernie, before we get started, could you tell us how the DVX100 changed the world?
Sure. The DVX100 is one of Panasonic's most popular cameras, and it was made, gosh, now, a number of years ago. But what made the DVX100 so popular was it was the first video camera that gave us true 24-frame recording. It made everybody who picked up a video camera instantly, at least in their own mind, a cinematographer.
It did, and laid it all down on a tape, and it was super easy, and it was very affordable and a great entry price, which brings us to now, the DVX200.
The DVX200 is really building on the legacy of the 100. Where the 100 gave us the first true 24-bit recording, this gives us true 24-bit recording in 4K 2160, which is digital cinema. Now there's two types of 4K. There's 4K, which is digital cinema, which is a 17:9 aspect ratio. Then there's 4K, which is being referred to as UHD, or TV 4K, which is a 16:9 ratio.
Ultra high definition.
That's correct. This camera does both of those. This camera will also do that UHD, that ultra high def, not only in 24, but at 30 and 60 frames a second. So you've got all kinds of power and flexibility, and it does high def, and it does standard def as well.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's actually a 5K sensor.
It is well, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to get into the technicalities of it. It is a larger sensor. It's a 4/3 inch sensor, and we are using, there is more of the sensor than we're actually using, which allows us to get the different formats.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very cool. And as far as I'm aware, are there any other cameras out there that are like this with a fixed lens? And why is that such a benefit?
It was a huge game changer because everybody else, when they started making 4K cameras, went the DSLR route. DSLR is interchangeable lenses. So then you saw other manufacturers start to make camcorder type cameras, but again with interchangeable lenses. The idea being that's what the DSLR guys wanted, that's what everybody wants. But again, there's a whole audience, and Panasonic was very smart to figure this out, a whole audience of people who are run and gun shooters. And not only are they run and gun shooters, but they want to also be able to get that cinematic shallow depth of field. So by using a large sensor, but having a fixed lens, Panasonic was able to allow you to have your old rocker switch on the top, so you can do your zoom as you're running and gunning. It allowed you all of that capability and familiarity that you had before, but now with all of this creative capability. This is a 13x zoom lens. That means when you're wide, you're about 27, 28 millimeter, and when you're long, you're about 313. To put that in perspective, if you wanted that kind of a throw on a DSLR, you're looking at a lens that's about that long, weighs about 12 pounds, and costs anywhere from $45,000 to $85,000. Okay, so here you've got under a $5,000 package. Again, lets you do shallow depth of field, lets you do run and gun, lets you do 4K, UHD, HD, SD, the whole ball of wax.
There's a very great article in Film and Digital Times which goes over how they built the glass, and yeah, you're right. It's fantastic. So before we kind of get into the meats and on the bone, let's talk about the workflow, the type of card and you know how that works out.
Okay, this camera records on SD cards. Yeah, that's right. Those little inexpensive SD cards. The only caveat, SDXC, and they have to be fast, okay, if you're going to record in 4K. But readily available, inexpensive. 2 card slots. Now, what's real cool about this is the camera can be set up to do a lot of different things with those 2 card slots. The first is it records, and no big deal. The second thing is you can go in and you say, okay, when the first card fills up, automatically go to the second card with no break. That's called relay recording. That allows you to get very long record times. As an example, this is my camera here. I have two 64 gig cards in here. That gives me 80 minutes of 4K on each card.
Wow.
So I can record a 160-minute long event in 4K. That's pretty cool. That's called relay recording. There's something else you can do. You can change the camera to do simultaneous recording. And that means that on both cards, it is recording exactly the same format and frame rate at the same time. Now this is very good because at the end of the day, I've got a deliverable to give to you, and I've got something that I keep as an archive and a backup. So that's cool. There's another type of recording that you can do, which is called dual codec. Now I know a lot of you are going, well, 4K is really interesting, but I'm not really shooting 4K. I don't deliver 4K. Why do I want to have a 4K camera? Lots of reasons for having it, but here's one of the cool things with this camera. I can set this camera so card 1 records 4K. And card 2 records HD. So now at the end of the day, I have my HD, which I cut and deliver to the client, but I have a 4K archive that I put in the vault so that years later I can go back to it and repurpose it, and it will still be that pristine quality. The other comment to make on this is if you are still just shooting and delivering in 4K, or I'm sorry, in HD, people go, why should I shoot 4K? There are 3 reasons. The first reason, it's just like when we moved from standard def to high def.
Sure.
We told people, shoot in high def, edit in high def, deliver it on standard def, it will always look better. That's definitely true in high def, or in 4K. The other thing is that 4K gives you that future proof. You got it in 4K, you can deliver it in high def, you can deliver it in standard def, but you got the 4K in the vault. And the last one, which as a shooter makes me a little nervous, but because you're shooting in 4K and you have 4 times the resolution of what you get in HD, you can actually, this camera we're looking at right here, we could actually in post zoom in on Gregor. And we would still have a totally high definition image without a camera operator doing that live. So there's lots of reasons to shoot in 4K, even if you're delivering in high def.
So a 4,500-ish price point isn't such a big price point whenever you're talking about using one camera to get 2 shots. Now I'm a big fan of 4K just because I feel like that's the logical next step in the whole resolution game. But one of the 2 things that I really love about this camera are not available in 4K: the intelligent autofocus,
Yes,
and the 5-axis optical image stabilizer.
the camera comes with a really good optical image stabilization. And what this means is if you are hand holding the camera, you want it to be rock steady. And so you can turn on that. If you're shooting in high def, you actually have a 5-axis stabilizer. So you can hold the camera up like this, and if you start shaking, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have a great shot. You can hold the camera down here, you're still going to have a good shot. When you go to 4K, because there's so much more processing going in on the camera, the stabilizer goes from 5-axis to 2-axis, but still at 2-axis for hand holding. I've taken this camera and put it up here strong against my stomach and chest, and I can record an interview handheld. So the stabilizer works really well. The intelligent autofocus you talked about, Panasonic spent a lot of time working on this because it's almost a perfect storm here, folks. You have a large sensor camera, you have 4K, and you have run and gun. And you know people using run and gun are going to use autofocus.
Sure.
How do you make all that work? Well, the autofocus has to be very fast, has to be very smooth, which it is, but it's also customizable. I can go into this camera and I can say, because generally, if we're looking at this wide shot of Gregor and I now, generally your autofocus would be right here in the center, okay? But maybe that's not where I want it. So the LCD screen on the camera is a touch screen. I can go put my finger there and drag it over here to me, and the autofocus will focus on me. So very clever implementation. The other thing, because this is a large sensor, you're going to want to do the shallow depth of field rack focus. I'm in focus, you're not. Then you start talking, you go into focus, I'm not. How do you do that when you're running gunning? Hollywood does it with a focus puller over there, right? You're a one-man band. How are you going to do it? This camera will do it for you. You can go in and I can point to me and say, I'm point 1, and I can point to Gregor and say, you're point 2, and I can say, make that transition in 2 seconds. And then I just push a button on the camera, and it'll automatically do the rack focus all day long. Really cool.
That's great, and this is a good segue into, could you help us kind of understand the difference between what we consider shallow depth of field and what I consider a usable depth of field?
Yes. Shallow depth of field. I'll get on my soapbox a little bit here because this is one of my big ones. Shallow depth of field is a cinematic trick. Now, some people will say it's a cinematic tool, but why it came about was 50, 85, 60, whatever the number was, years ago. When they're projecting their image on a huge screen, everything is in focus. And somebody had this grand idea about, how do I get the audience to look at one part of the screen? So they're all looking at the same thing at the same time. The only way you can do that is to throw everything else out of focus, because your eye will automatically go to what's in focus. This is what shallow depth of field is. It was a trick to get you to look into some part of the screen. Now, people always say, oh, but it's the cinema look, it's the film look. I got to have that film look.
Whatever that means.
Give me a break, right? One of the top films always rated as the best film is Citizen Kane. Go back and look at Citizen Kane. There is no shallow depth of field in it, okay? Shallow depth of field is a tool to be able to tell your story. Use it, but use it wisely. I saw a film a couple of months ago. Guy shot it. It was an industrial film. Guy shot it on his DSLR camera. It was introducing a new lathing product. Big machine. Every single shot starts out of focus and then racks into focus because he could do it. It was annoying. It did not help the story at all. So with this camera, we talk about shallow depth of field versus usable depth of field. Here's an image of a girl that I shot, and you'll notice she's got her finger over here and her eye is in focus, but her finger is not. I refer to that as usable shallow depth of field, because really thin shallow depth of field, Gregor, would be where your eye's in focus and your nose is not.
Sure.
Which means that's great for stills. But, you know, look at him. He's moving. He's breathing. Every time he does that, if you had that shallow depth of field, he would be going in and out of focus. That would be very annoying in a moving picture. So there's a difference between shallow depth of field and what we refer to as usable shallow depth of field. And usable shallow depth of field allows me to look at you and isolate you from the background. So we have that shallow depth of field, but you're free to move. You can move, you can breathe, you can articulate, and you're not continually going in and out of focus. That usable shallow depth of field is one of the strong points in the camera.
Another thing that's really great about this camera is the V-Log recording,
okay.
And it's getting 12 stops of dynamic range. Could you kind of speak to that a little?
Yeah. This gets a little technical, but what V-Log is V-Log is a Panasonic, started with the VariCam, the top-end Panasonic camera.
Sure.
VariCam, V-Log. It's a logarithmic gamma curve. Now, what does that mean? What that means is you've got a very kind of linear curve going all the way from your very darks to your very brights. Normally when you shoot, you are shooting at about 5 or 6 stops of latitude. When you shoot, it looks good. When you go into edit and you want to do color correction, you can play a little bit, but you can't do a lot. V-Log came about because of this digital cinema revolution that I was talking about, where people want to shoot film-like. Hollywood spends much more time color grading a movie than they do shooting it. And when they shoot very flat in a V-Log curve or raw data. And then they spend months adding the color to it that they want. We've never been able to do that, particularly not in a handheld camera. Now with this camera, you can. We turn on V-Log, and on this camera it's actually called V-Log L, because the VariCam, Panasonic's flagship camera, gives you 14 plus stops of latitude. Here, we only get 12.
Sure.
12 stops of latitude. What that allows me to do in post is I can go in there and I know I've got all that information, so I can go in and I can paint those images and pull up everything that I want and have it look really, really good. Unfortunately, when you do record that way, your image looks really flat. and there's no contrast in it, and when, you know, your producer's gonna look at you and go, excuse me, what are you doing? So what Panasonic has done, which is nice, is on one of their user buttons, you can hit a user button and it automatically will go into what's called Vlog Assist. And although you're recording Vlog very flat, what you're seeing on the viewfinder is what you're used to looking at, essentially after you had color graded it. So you keep your clients happy while you're actually getting the footage and all of the information that you need.
That's great. And this is what they refer to as the new color science into the camera?
No, that's different.
Oh,
Okay.
tell us about that.
All right. When you pull a camera out of the box, you turn on the camera, and the camera generally comes, as this one does, preloaded with 6 scene files. And the scene files are different looks. Outdoor lighting, fluorescent lighting, high contrast, you know, those types of things. Now, one of the things that people were commenting about when this camera came out about a year ago is that Panasonic is known for its wonderful skin tones. And people were finding that the skin was going yellow and getting kind of blotchy, and whoa, what's that all about? And so myself and a bunch of other DPs and cinematographers around the country were asked by Panasonic to create new scene files so that people that were having this problem could load a new scene file and get skin tones and things that looked good. Well, we did, but at the same time, there was lots of conversation going back to the factory about, you know, what can we do? What can we do? And the factory, God love them, heard what people were saying. And so they created a brand new color palette, which is basically, they went into the color imagery of the camera and essentially reset it all. And what it does with this new palette is it gives what the factory calls a natural palette. And we can show you, we have some examples of side by side, and you will notice that the new palette is much warmer and much more natural looking than the old palette. And it's a free download from Panasonic. Just go to the website and download it. And people
If
are,
you buy a new
are
one,
really
it comes
liking
with it.
It's there.
It's there already, yep.
Now, the other thing, here's a website. I'm going to show you this website. Go to this website because my friend Barry Green has written an excellent ebook, which is called The Guide to the DVX200. Barry wrote books for Panasonic in the past years. You could only get them if you bought the camera. This is a free download.
Sure.
So if you're at all interested, download the book, go ahead and play with it, read through it. He's got lots of interactive stuff. He also, right there on that website, has a bunch of video tutorials, which will explain lots of aspects about the camera. Great resource.
That's awesome. So, Bernie, let's get to one of my favorite parts about this camera, which you're already holding in your hand, the iPad. But instead of buying like a $5,000 camera controller, now you can get away with all that stuff in a free app.
Yeah, this is very cool. Go to the iPad store and download. It's called AGROP, as the camera's AG DVX200. AGROP. It's a free download. You put it onto your iPad. Then you have a wireless dongle, USB wireless dongle that you put onto the camera. You go into the camera, you set up the network settings in the camera, go to the iPad, hit the Wi-Fi hotspot that's coming out from your camera, open the app, and here you go. This is a total camera control unit. I can set all the menus, I can zoom, focus, I can white balance, I can paint the camera, I can start and stop record. So literally, in an inexpensive studio, you could have 3 of these cameras, 3 of the Wi-Fi sticks, and 3 iPads, and you got complete control.
That's great. And who are they targeting that for?
This is pretty much for, well, there's a couple of applications for it. It's pretty much for your small schools, little studio things and things like that that want to do. The other thing that you can do is you could put this camera then now up on a jib arm and you control it wirelessly from wherever you're standing on the set. So there's a couple of different applications.
Sounds like a perfect student camera.
Yep.
Actually.
This is a run and gun large sensor 4K camera that can also do high def. This camera allows you to shoot in all kinds of various frame rates and formats. You can overcrank, you can undercrank, you can get all kinds of great effects.
Up to 120 frames, I believe.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It has built-in ND filters. It's very well balanced. What I like about cameras, particularly these handheld cameras, is that if you pick them up, this camera is balanced. Some of the competitors, you pick it up and it flops. And so you're holding it this way all day, compensating for that. That tires you out. This camera, you don't run into those problems. There's a lot of good examples of footage. We'll throw a couple of clips up here that I've shot. Certainly, I thank the guys at Intrigue.TV for having us down, Gregor as well. I like the camera. I'll give you my web email address. You can throw that up if anybody has any questions. The Panasonic DVX200 is a rock solid camera.
Man, Bernie, thank you so much for taking the time. I
Thank
really
you, Carter.
appreciate it.
Yep.
And thanks for tuning in to Intrigue.TV.
Bye.